Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the first webinar of the series with a focus on big data. My name is I'll be your moderator and webinar organizer. Your presenters today will be Mike Martin and Ross Clark. Mike is the Practice Director for Information Governance at BTRG, and Ross is the Information Lifecycle Governance Specialist at BTRG. Before we begin our presentation, I'd like to go over a few items for this webinar. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question pane located near the bottom of the control panel. If you join your meeting via telephone, be sure to select the telephone option and use the dial-in number, access code, and PIN to complete the connection. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the full webinar as well as the PowerPoint slides on our website at www.btrgroup/datawebinar. More information on accessing these webinars will be provided in an email following the presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about the objectives on this webinar. Take it away, Mike.
Great. Thank you very much, Desi. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for joining today. So I'm just going to get the presentation started. If you have any issues with anything or if you're having a question, please go ahead and type that into the chat window, and I'll ask Desi and Russ to keep an eye on that while I'm going through this session today. So today we'll be talking about big data and some of the buzz that's in the industry, and really discussing the hype around big data versus the level of opportunity. And I'd like to share some of the thoughts that we have on those. So I'd really just first like to start with a poll question. So I'm going to launch that. Just curious to understand some of the tangible benefits that you hope to achieve through any big data initiatives that you may have already started, or things that you're planning, or just even hopes that you have. So if you can go ahead and answer those questions. Give a few seconds for people to answer there. Hopefully everyone can hear us okay. I'll just leave up another couple seconds, another 3 seconds. Go ahead and vote if you haven't already. Okay, so great. So just show the results there. You can see that lots of people looking at reducing risk, some decision making, and efficient operations. Smaller percentage there around increased sales, but so our top choice is improved customer experience, which is very interesting. And I think that's certainly something that big data can do for people, and then risk and decision making. So those are very interesting. I thank you for sharing your thoughts on that poll. Okay, so I love this quote, about data being the new oil. It's really a new natural resource that we have. But again, like crude oil, it's valuable, but it's really only when it becomes refined. If it's unrefined, it can't really be used. And I think that's very true of data. And that's one of the things that I'll be discussing a little bit, is how can we get the most out of the data that we have. So if you look at data today, it's really coming at us very quickly from a variety of sources. There's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data that are created every day. And this really surprised me, this statistic, when I first found it out. But really only half of the data that we secured is currently being protected today. And companies are actually over-retaining their data by 70%. And we'll definitely get into a little bit more of that. And by 2015, you'll see that there'll be 3 billion people online, and that'll push our data to 8 zettabytes, which has so many zeros in it, I'm not even sure how many that is. But you can definitely see that lots of data sources, and there's a tremendous, what I feel is an issue with data explosion. So what is big data? What do we mean by big data? Well, it's often defined by the 3 to 4, maybe sometimes you hear even 5 V's. One being volume, right? Data volume, as I just talked about. If you look at the trend in data growth, by 2021, data will be 44 times larger than it is right now. So we have a tremendous amount of data right now, but it's going to grow by 44 times, which is very, very significant. And 90% of the data in the world has been created in the last 2 years. So in just the last 2 years, we've created the majority of our data. So it's growing at a rapid, rapid pace. And of course, it's also coming at us very, very quickly, right? So velocity is another key thing. There's 30 billion RFID sensors in place today. We have the Twitter stream, Facebook, and other social networking updates. We are increasingly instrumenting our businesses and our enterprises with the RFID tags, scanning of Q codes and barcodes. There's tons and tons of data coming at us, and it's coming at us very quickly, which may also mean that it has a very short lifespan of value because it is moving so fast. The other thing is that much of the world's data is actually unstructured data, and that's where we see some of the biggest growth. So there's a variety of data. Data that's structured, which we're used to in our enterprise systems, but the social sites, YouTube, Google+, Facebook, pictures becoming increasingly more popular. So we're getting a lot of media as a big source of data as well. So tons of variety, and I think one of the keys will be to make sure that we bring structured and unstructured data together, and we'll touch on that a little bit. I'm actually getting a little bit of echo, so I'm not sure if you're not speaking, the other panelists, if you could just put yourself on mute. Thank you. Okay. So another poll question here, just whether you trust your company's data currently today to make critical decisions. You know, how strongly do you feel that if you were to implement big data solution that you have all of the data and that you fully trust that everything that you're capturing would be enough to make, you know, really mission critical business decisions from? So far it's basically split between yes and no, which definitely makes sense. I think it's certainly a challenge today, especially as we bring in these unstructured data sources and perhaps public data sources like Twitter and Facebook and other things. So I'll leave that up for 3 more seconds, and then I'll close it out. So go ahead and vote if you haven't already, please. Okay, I'll close that out, share that. So you can see it's split right down the middle at 50-50. So actually, that's not that surprising, and really 1 in 3 business leaders today actually don't trust to make these critical decisions. So there's another view, the veracity of data. You know, we have to make sure that if we're going to implement big data and start to have these new conclusions or insights exposed to us, and sometimes they're even surprising, and they're different than what we expect. They're not intuitive. We have to make sure that we can trust those conclusions. So that's a key point. So what does all this mean, you know, for us? Well, I think big data certainly is viewed as a huge opportunity because we have this data that we're perhaps not fully mining today, and we don't have all the analytics we want. It can present tremendous opportunity for brand new insights, perhaps even sometimes surprising insights into our customer base and our business, and enabling, you know, really rapid and new analytics. And actually, big data can help us do some of the, you know, what you may call meat and potatoes analytics that we do today can really enhance those and soup those up. So, you know, if there is...
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Real quick, just to jump in there, I think that's an important point that we hear at these different conferences that we go to is, you know, the people at the conferences sit through the seminars, and then at the end, we end up talking about, you know, what does it really mean for me? You know, I understand the big data and the term that gets thrown around, but how does that affect me in my role personally? And I think kind of what we're about to describe and talk about really gets to that point of how it affects each person in the organization and in that role to lead the big data initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. We do that quite a bit. And so, you know, one of the aspects that I look at very significantly is I think the idea that what may be considered hype is that big data might be the answer to all our data challenges, right? So I think when we look at the processing power that comes with solutions like Hadoop and other big insights and streams from IBM and other big data solutions, we think that we can just point this new architecture at our data sources, and that's actually going to solve all of the challenges that we have. But our view at BTRG is that it doesn't, right? And I think without proper governance, you're really only getting half or even less of the picture. And so I'll elaborate on that a little bit. But if you look at perhaps the other side of big data and the other side of this phenomenon of tremendous data volume, velocity, veracity issues, really it comes down to there are some areas that we have to look at, like risk, the costs of storing all this data. With 44 times growth in data over the next decade, the cost to maintain all of this is completely unsustainable. We can't deal with it. And pointing big data at it isn't necessarily going to solve all of these things. And certainly the more data we have and the less we're mature in the way we manage and govern that data, the more risk we have. And that certainly is a security risk. There's more data we have, the more exposure we have, the more things that can be, we're over-retaining or we're not compliant with privacy laws, or worse, we're vulnerable to cyber attacks and intrusions. So I believe there's two sides of the big data coin, the analytics and the dealing with tremendous data volume side, but also the governance side. And I feel that's really the key, is to look at what you're doing, look at a plan to find only the valuable information, forget about what you're over-retaining and that doesn't really germane to making great trusted business decisions, and focus on that data that is the correct data. So if we look at any enterprise, it's very common, 70%. That 70% of your data is actually debris. It's not bringing you any value. And if we point a big data solution or implement a big data initiative against our entire enterprise or these volumes of data, if 70% of that is trash, we may be making bad business decisions or drawing incorrect conclusions. So I think it's absolutely critical that you deal with this and focus on the data that has value. That's the remaining 30% that has value for your business, or you're obligated to hold it through records or retention compliance issues that you must address. Or if it's on legal hold or part of an ongoing legal matter, then you would be required to hold it. But just imagine that equation and how that can change the dynamics. Instead of looking at 100%, we only have to look at 30%, and that's really where all the value is. But the problem today is that we don't know the difference, right? We don't know what is trash and what has value. And if that's the case, if I don't know where my value lies, then I must assume that everything is valuable. And if I have a court case that's of any significance, I have to assume that 100% all of my data is part of that and needs to be put on hold. And that is unsustainable and really won't work. Keeping everything isn't necessarily the plan you want to go. And I think if there is hype around big data, it may be that big data will solve this. But what I'm proposing is that you won't solve it with big data alone, and that governance will play a really, really key point. And not only will it address what I've perhaps painted so far as a downside, but it will actually provide more than value. It will provide you with the ability to move forward. So if we look at the cost of doing nothing today, you can see where we are, maybe $105 million is our overall data footprint spend, and we're at 118 in 2013 and growing. You can see that balloons to 165 million at a normal growth rate on data. And we can do things like archive, virtualize, and tier, but really you have to take a look at that 70% and dispose of that data and do all of these things in order to not only make sure your conclusions you draw with big data are good, but to pay for doing so, right? So let's talk about budget for a second, and I'll launch another question here, just with some ranges around where your companies are currently investing in big data. What's the budget? What do you see as either current or future investments around big data? And certainly we're not going to really do anything with these numbers, so you can feel free to answer this and just pick guess at what range where you think these initiatives would be costing. Go ahead and answer if you haven't answered yet. This is really valuable, I think, for everyone to kind of see where companies are spending and how much they're devoting to it. And so far, most of it is in the more expensive bracket with $1 million and above. I'll just give another few seconds. Go ahead and please vote if you haven't so far. The poll should be up on your screen. Just another. Okay, thank you very much for voting, and I'll show the results there. So you can see 60% in the $1 to $10 million range. I know that's a very big range. 20% more than 10. And then 20% in 100 to 500,000. And some of this, I understand, will be predicated on the size of your enterprise. But if you look at this, no one less than 100,000. And big data is an expensive proposition for us to consider. So we want to go into it as intelligently and as well prepared as we possibly can. So how do you prepare for moving forward with big data? Certainly, we want to establish good building blocks, establish strong governance, and drive an effective strategy towards implementing big data and perhaps even pay for it as well. So one of the things we want to do and one of the building blocks is making sure our environments are secure. As you may be bringing structured and unstructured data sources together, you may be exposing or commingling data. You don't want cross-contamination. So you want to make sure that your data and your environments are secure. As you enable perhaps more and more of your enterprise to access higher levels of analytics, that's another area to make sure it's secure. You want to make sure that your non-production environments aren't exposing data to outsourcers or contractors or others, and of course prevent any cyber attacks. We want to move data and store it commensurate with its value, right? We want to look at archiving solutions, tiered storage solutions, really to deal with data growth. And most importantly, we actually want to delete some of our data. I know that may be a radical concept, and it's oftentimes a challenge, but it's through deletion and doing it intelligently and defensively that will allow us to feel confident enough to push the button and go ahead and remove the data, and thereby giving us the greatest impact. Again, the cost of doing nothing. By 2016, we're at $165 million worth of cost in this example. Of disposal is tremendous. It will bring us from $105 million to $59 million, and over time will be more than $100 million worth of savings by deleting. It's the single most important thing we can do to save costs, and it won't just stop growth, actually, but it will roll it back. It will actually reverse the curve of your data growth and offer you some great side effects, right? So the key side effects are, number one, there's reduced cost, reduced risk by having less data, improved execution, because when we streamline our systems, and in order to enable us to get to a point where we can defensively dispose of our data, we'll have to improve our systems through good governance and actually new automation and new levels of maturity in how we look at data, how we execute e-discovery and legal holds and retention policies, and our archival tiering, test data management, and data security efforts. And so our approach that we recommend is that you mature your processes to reduce your risk, improve your execution, and that ties into being able to defensively dispose of your data, paving the way for very successful big insights, big data initiatives with great new analytics. And oh, by the way, now we can do a lot more cool stuff with big data because now we've saved so much money that we've been able to essentially fund it because of the significant cost savings. If we try and move forward with retaining all this data and without bending the curve of that data growth backwards, we won't be successful. And so there's a lot of difficulty in managing the volume and the value around this and curbing that risk. And oftentimes we see many of our clients already trying to solve these challenges independently. But our recommendation and our approach is to really change that paradigm, right? So if we look at each of the key stakeholders, if we start with the legal department, they're coming at this from an obligation standpoint. They're curious and obligated to reduce legal risk, reduce risk to the enterprise, and make sure that they're meeting their obligations to store data and looking for good legal outcomes. The business is coming at it from a different angle, where they want to be able to make valuable and better business decisions, driving the business to growth and net new revenue. IT is often struggling between legal and the business. They're dealing with this doubling data and shrinking budgets and being requested from legal to put things on hold, and they don't know how to find it all, and therefore everything is on hold. And to serve the business, to provide them with valuable insights. Your records, security, and compliance departments are struggling with, maybe you have hundreds of thousands of boxes at Iron Mountain, and how do we manage all of that? How do we deal with our physical records versus our digital records, and make sure that the policies that we need in North America or internationally are all being observed and are actually actionable? So go ahead and ask another poll. If you can go ahead and respond to that. Really, we're looking for what level in the organization does your thought leadership around big data reside? Where do you see things being driven from? The CEO or a level around that, your line of business, your departments, or deeper in there. So if you can go ahead and answer that poll question now. And we'll leave this question up for a few seconds. So far, everybody's at line of business or function head. A few people there at CEO or one level down. Okay, I'll go ahead and close it out in 3 seconds. Thank you for responding. And I'll share the results there. So you can see a lot of people with it at line of business and function head, some at CEO, and some without the big data leadership at this point. Okay, thank you for responding. So when we look at these various stakeholders and we look at where we think the big data leadership is, it's often a big challenge for this and to get everybody into the same room or really on the same page. Like I said, we have legal with obligation, business trying to drive value, IT trying to deal with their budgets and curbing the data growth and dealing with the requirements from these other areas, records struggling with how to actually implement actual policies and instrument those policies. So really, we must bring all of these areas together to have any success with big data initiatives, and really any IT initiatives, as well as defensible disposal initiatives and governance initiatives. You have to bring all of these together. And to do that, you actually do need to get to your C-level, and you need your CEO on board with some of this, because it is enterprise-wide, and it needs to be enterprise-wide to really be successful and really become a positive business transformation. So starting in 2015, Gartner expects that leading organizations will begin to use their big data in an embedded way. It'll become part of the lifeblood of those. Only 10 to 15% of organizations will actually take full advantage. But what this means is that those that do are actually going to outperform their competition by 20%. 20% ahead of your competition. I think that's pretty good. I know I would certainly take that. But in order to do that, you have to be able to take full advantage of big data. And what I'm proposing here today is the way forward to do that is through a strong governance platform that will enable you to do so. So we'll kind of move on to some success stories that we've seen around big data initiatives, and I'll certainly invite Russ to chime in on these as he has seen this a bit. But, you know, if you look at, there's an insurance company that's leading their call center, leading insurance provider. They were actually able to improve their efficiency around siloed data. They cut a 3-second time off of their call, which doesn't seem like a lot, but over 14,000 employees, that's the value equal to 100 full-time employees saved them over $11 million per year. That's extremely significant from a very small tweak of 3 seconds.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with what you're saying. I think that is what they're getting from the big data initiative may not seem like a lot as 3 seconds per call, but when you can put a number to it, it really is amazing the difference it makes.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's key in big data, right? Is that we may find we're at this very high level of tuning, but when we're talking about the entire enterprise and across large data volumes, it can be radically significant. Hertz is another example where they were actually able to leverage big data to categorize their customer comments, and they were actually able to increase their report consistency, and it allowed their field managers from having to do that tagging, and it doubled their effectiveness, actually. So very significant there as well.
And Mike, a little bit more about this in particular. There was, I guess, a study specifically in Philadelphia that survey feedback led managers to discover that there were delays occurring during the returns at certain parts of the day. So what they were able to do was make staffing adjustments very quickly and really ensure that there was a manager present during these specific times to make the return process as smooth as possible for their customers. But the interesting part is that they were able to make it so quickly because they already had the initiative in place. They didn't have to go through and interview different positions in the company and try and figure out and analyze data. They already had this initiative in place and were able to make that change quickly.
Yeah, that's true. It's a great point, Russ. And I think this example really highlights some of the things that are exciting about big data. Number one is that it gives us tremendous vision into our business, right? We can actually see out into the business in ways that may not have been possible before, or at least not possible without a lot of manual work, maybe interviewing people, compiling this vast database. Great vision into our business. And also another aspect of big data is that sometimes there's a little bit, or what may be considered a surprising insight, right? The fact that these field managers found a time of day that there was a problem that wasn't already apparent to them. So that is really another great aspect of it. And then sort of going back to this idea of being a leader, if you look at Amazon.com, certainly a leader in their segment, they were actually able to improve their customer relations because they compiled data which allowed them to have much more intuitive and quicker service calls. And so, Amazon was able to take, their business and actually bring it to another level through a big data initiative.
Yeah, and Mike, I actually read an article kind of about this point, and it was from the perspective of a man who had an issue with his Kindle. It had broken, so he was dreading calling them up, and typical awful experience of customer service. He thought it was going to be an issue, and really what he said was that that experience turned Amazon into his favorite retailer because of how quickly and efficiently they solved his problem. He issued a ticket through their website. He got a call about 2 minutes later from a woman who knew everything about his buying history and other issues he had reported, and was able to walk him through the resolution in about 2 minutes. And he said, that typically awful experience was made so positive that he'll always go back to Amazon now.
Yeah, and what this highlights to me is sort of back to that chart where the enterprises that embrace big data will outpace their competition by 20%. This shows you where this is a critical factor for Amazon, and they were able to turn somebody probably into a lifelong customer, and maybe now he'll go to Amazon before he goes to any other retailer. And if you can repeat that across your customer base, that would be very significant. So there are tremendous things that we can get from big data. And then just one more example. Constant Contact, who does a lot of marketing and email campaigns, they were able to improve their analysis performance by 40 times. Very significant gain. They reduced their wait time from hours to seconds, which is huge, and they increased their effectiveness by 20%, actually over 20%. So if you're able to increase effectiveness by 20%, how significant would that be for your enterprise? I know it would be significant for mine. Bruce, did you have any comments on this one?
No, I think these numbers kind of speak for themselves for this example.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely do. So again, I think what we're offering here is that big data is worth it. It's certainly exciting. I think that's a lot of the reason why there's a lot of buzz about it in the industry, because we feel that it can be very changing for an enterprise. It can really enable you to take significant steps. So to summarize what we've discussed today, there's tremendous ROI in both big data initiatives, but when you couple it with governance, you'll be able to save millions of dollars for your IT and legal department, improve effectiveness, and you'll be able to fund these big data initiatives so that you can move from maintaining the business and running the business and dealing with this big data volume and how you're going to deal with all these data sources to actually doing very significant things for growing your business. And we like this idea of thinking big, and I think you have to think big. And by big, I mean across your enterprise. Strive for significant gains in your business, but we recommend starting small. Think wide, start with something tangible, and act fast, right? Get focusing on tangible results right away, then accelerate from there. Show a win, and then move on. Seek out, proven tools and methods. So I think the idea of bringing multiple stakeholders together, solving legal, IT, business, and records problems together all at once through strong governance will enable you to do that. We're going to solve major cost issues. We're going to bring the stakeholders together. We want to scale these solutions, and that will actually enable you to move forward and into the next decade of growth and benefit for your company. So, the big data hype, if there is hype, I think, we're kind of posing this question, is it worth it? And I think our answer today is that it is worth it. You can see some of these great results that companies have achieved, but there is a little hype there still, and we're hoping to help clear that up a little bit. And I think there's really two aspects to the hype. One is, just, defining big data and understanding what big data is. The other is that big data might be the solve all our problems, and that if we just buy, into Hadoop and some of these, big data appliances and big data platforms, that will solve all of our data problems, and we'll get these great insights and find needle in a haystack kind of new, exciting ways to engage with customers. But really, you must couple it with a governance policy, remove that 70% of debris, focus on where the value is, and push forward with big data where you find that value. Russ, did you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on the two main points, but really what it comes down to is that if you're not doing anything else, big data, and if you're not doing anything else, make sure you're at least preparing your company to go in that direction with data management at some point. And like you said about making sure the solutions are all scalable and you're using the same thing, the same solution that will be able to speak to other departments. So down the line, even if you're not going to put in an initiative, in the near future, you'll be prepared for that. And I think that's an important part of the hype and, going into the next stages of big data.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. Yeah, I agree. So certainly, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the GoToWebinar chat window. I see David Calloway had a couple of comments here, just sort of going back to the customer call center examples that we talked about. He was just saying that customer satisfaction, impression of the overall competence of the call center people, and accuracy must have improved too, and that's certainly true. We see that, and I think companies are looking for ways to do this, and I see, they feel there's a promise in big data that they can achieve some of these results as well and gain new vision into their enterprise that they haven't had before. So if anyone else has a question, just go ahead and type it into the chat window. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for joining today. We really appreciate it. And this is just the first in a series of webinars that we'll be doing. So I encourage you to go to btrgroup.com/data webinar, and you can see the full schedule, and you can register for forthcoming webinars in this series where we're talking about major trends that we see in technology that will shape, the IT and really all industries over the next decade. So it's going to be an exciting series, and I really encourage you to join that. If you have any questions, certainly you can contact us at infogov@btrgroup.com, or just visit our main page of our website at btrgroup.com. And certainly you can reach us at the number there, 877-287-4462, extension 7114. That's 7114. So again, thank you all for joining. I don't see any other questions at this point. So have a great day, everyone, and I hope to see you on subsequent webinars. Thank you.